come over to attend this International Culture School. And thank you very much. And also, I'm happy to meet my old friends, especially Dr. Hildo King and my colleagues of the East Asia Pacific LPR over there. And also I'm happy to meet the young budding ecologists who are our future scientists. Today, I have first slide. I have to talk about Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary. Yesterday, the Director General lectured about MIDAS. What is MIDAS again? International Designated Sites. And you have noticed that the Philippines is not one of the MIDAS. Though the Philippines has several UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites is Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary. There are several heritage sites in the Philippines, but mostly on cultural heritage, only a few of the natural heritage. And Mount Hamiguitan Range is an example, one of the very few natural World Heritage Sites. So I am going to tell a story about how it became a World Heritage Site. Okay, the next slide. This one. I have before I have to discuss Mount Hamiguitan. Well, I have to give a short discussion about the Philippines, and I was instructed by Professor Oshapol to touch also on FilterNet and our LTR sites. That's your instruction. And I will also be discussing about Mindanao LTR sites before I proceed to the main topic, which is Mount Hamiguitan. As you know, the Philippines is one of 17 mega-density countries. It means that these 17 countries hold 2/3 of the world's biological resources. And these 7 countries also claim 80% of the most endangered biodiversity. So that's the Philippines there. And, the Philippines is a really diverse country because it has several ecosystems, several microhabitats. And in fact, we have over 52,000 species of plants and animals. And they are distributed in 7,641 islands. Somebody asked me how many islands we have in the Philippines. I said 7,641 islands. And there's a high degree of endemism. 50% of the species are endemic to our country. And though the Philippines is a really diverse country, it is also one of the happiest of the hotspots because of the alarming rate of forest destruction that we lost 97% of our natural forests. The Philippines usually is categorized into 3 island groups. So you have the Luzon, the northern part of the Philippines is the Luzon Island. Then we have the middle group of islands, the Visayas, and the southernmost part is the Mindanao Island, where I lived and spent my life there doing research for several decades. And that would be the focus of my discussion, the Mindanao LTR sites later on. It's no longer working. There. Well, that's the panoramic view of our university. How big is the area? About 2,100 hectares in area. We have gone to our university years ago, Dr. Hildo King. So that's the panoramic view. And we serve 16,000 students and offering several graduate programs, 37 graduate programs, of which 26 for master's degree program, and 11 PhD program. Well, this is what the Center at the University just small building, but it is actively involved in research on biodiversity. And I was the founding director of this center, the Center for Biodiversity Research and Extension in Mindanao. And one of the mandates of the center is to help protect and preserve the remaining biodiversity in the island of Mindanao through research, extension, and implementing extension activities, training activities for the stakeholders. So that's the mandates. What are the mandates of the center? Well, that is me. For several decades, I did research on ferns and lichens. I was a monodisciplinary person. Always ferns and lichens for several years, but then it expanded my interest on studying other plant groups, because once I would be in the forest like that, I would not be seeing only the ferns and lichens, but also other plant groups like Rafflesia there. We have the Malinophora, which are parsley plants, and other interesting plants, and particularly those plants which are endemic to our country. So that's the focus of my research. But then, that mindset has changed. When I was younger, I'd like to do research to publish. But I was not interested on improving the lives of people. I'm not that interested on involving the stakeholders in my research. The stakeholders are the people who I just hired as guides, as porters or climbers, but not involved in my research. But that mindset has changed. That our research should be utilized by the stakeholders to improve their lives and the environment, isn't it? It's not for my own business interest. I do research simply to get promoted from instructor, assistant professor, associate and co-professor. That was my mindset before, but that has changed, because research should be utilized by the stakeholders and the people, because they are the users of knowledge or information to improve their lives, isn't it? And so from a monodisciplinary person, I became a multidisciplinary person by involving other experts, by involving several stakeholders, because if you involve so many experts, you learn from other experts. And for this kind of research, I learned how to do research on biodiversity, which should be multidisciplinary, participatory, collaborative in approach. So that should be the methods that should be used when you do research. If you do it alone, it's impossible to achieve the objectives of the research. You have to involve other experts, learn from them, share resources to implement research effectively. And because of this beginning, when we did the research, the 5 research program on biodiversity, we implemented such approach, such multidisciplinary, collaborative, and and involved so many experts, not only botanists. So we not only involved as botanists, but zoologists. They're expert on soil. There's an expert on their sociologists, anthropologists, and to do this kind of research. And not only that, we did some research like from upland to terrestrial coast riverine system, riparian system, down into scientific system to understand the flow of biodiversity. So this is the beginning that I should change the approach in doing research, not just me doing the research biodiversity, but involve other experts. That's normally located in the northeastern part of Mindanao, and we did the tour research there for several years, and we gathered a lot of basic information, basic knowledge. But the stakeholders, the natives there, we're not happy because we just generated basic information. For what? So what? It doesn't improve their lives. So from the basic research, we proceeded to the applied research. And this is now the so-called reforestation project. Okay, the knowledge gained from basic research, that is generation of basic knowledge or information, that was used to do this kind of research. Because at first phase, basic research, we already learned what are the species which are fast-growing. 3 species are fast-growing, which are endemic, which should be given high priority for the use of the reforestation. We call it reforestation because we use the endangered species which are fast-growing, and we learned that in the first phase of the research. And for this kind of project now, it has improved the lives of the people because of involvement in the collection of the seedlings from the wild, nurture in nursery, and transplant them, outplant them through the forest for the reforestation. So in this case, it has improved the environment as well as it has improved the livelihood of these natives or indigenous peoples in the area. So this is a good project. And that's the denoted place of Mount Maninda where the indigenous people, stakeholders, made use as a site for reforestation using the fast-growing 3 species which are endemic to the place. Okay, there's a picture to show their involvement. And here, I'd like to stress the focus of our research now. It would be the mountain ecosystem, the river system, and the riparian ecosystem down to the coastal ecosystem, and the inventory, monitoring, and conservation of the flora, fauna, and we have to train on how to utilize their resources. Because the stakeholders, so that they have to just collecting data, basic information. No, they're not interested in that. They would like to know how their resources should be utilized for livelihood, for household use, and so on. And so that's the picture now on how we did our biodiversity research. Now, I was requested to talk about just quickly, just a few slides. While the Philippines became an official member of the ILPR in 2007, when I presented our program to the ILPR community, Professor Hidaki was there. He has witnessed when the Philippines became an official member of ILPR. And for now, we proceed to the Philippine LTR. After declaring Philippines as an official member of ILPR, we presently have now 14 sites in the Philippines, and it's there. The 5 Mindanao RTI sites, in which that will be the focus of my discussion later on, and the approaches that we may use, multidisciplinary, participatory, collaborative, and so on. And for all the sites in the Philippines, 14 ATR sites, we have established 2-hectare permanent plan for long-term monitoring of the flora, fauna, and other resources in the area. Now, this is the Middle ATR site. I show the 5 sites. We have there Manindan, which I mentioned earlier, Mount Kinalan, Mount Uswan, near our university, and the southernmost part, Apo, and the southeastern part, Mount Pangilinan, in which this is the main topic for my discussion later on. And those are the view of the sites. And what have we done in the 2-hectare permanent plan? Well, we have documented the number of individuals in a 2-hectare permanent plot, and this is just an example of a 1-hectare plot in Mount Apo with that number of individuals. and Hamilitan middle portion, there, 7,935 individuals, and in Mount Muswan, just simply 1,650 individuals for a 1 hectare permanent plot. So we had all three there and counted the number of individuals as well as how research reached the area. And this will show the height of each tree individual, the country cover, and how the species or the three individuals are distributed in the 20 by 20 metro area. And to elaborate that, again, it's like it is there. To elaborate, there is a large view of the 20 by 20 metro area to show the height of the three individual tree, the country cover, and how the individuals are distributed in the 20 by 20 metro area. And this is really for long-term monitoring. This was done in 2016, then we have followed by 2023. Just basic information, because if it is an interior site, you should gather the basic information about biodiversity, flora and fauna, and so on. So the resources species, we computed the diversity value, and also documented the chemical and physical characteristics of the soil. So you have noticed that some sites have acidic soil, and some have a high organic matter and high exchangeable potassium, and some others have high particle density. So as a site, we should have that basic information. That will change through time. Okay? And now, this is one of the sites, Mount Muswan FAR site. This is within our university. Dr. Shukbon has gone also to our university, and I think he has viewed this Mount Muswan FAR site. And I said we have established a permanent plant there, also a tractor permanent plant, and documented the number of individuals. And so you will not hear the change through time. In 2016, this 1 hectare plant has only 1,756 individuals. And now, this last year, we did the recensus, the number has gone down to 1,538, and this is due to natural calamities, and sometimes it's anthropogenic that will explain the decline in number of individuals.
Excuse me, what's the size of this plant?
It's 1 hectare, and this hectare divided into 25 20 by 20 metro area. And this is not American Wildlife Sanctuary, which is the focus of my discussion. We also had the 1 hectare plot, and you will notice that it has more of the number of individuals of trees. You know, Mount American Wildlife Sanctuary has an automatic soil, and that means that the trees have smaller DBS here on the very side, and that will explain why the high number of individuals are present in Mount Hamilton Range as compared to Mount Muswan FAR site. And also we have this information about the richness of the flora and fauna, comparing the 2016 data and the 2023 data as to the richness of the vascular plants. Now, this is now the mid of my presentation, and I will be giving a story of how Mount Hamilton Range became a UNESCO World Heritage Site at this time. And I said it's not a mega, it's not one of the megas, it's just a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And you will see the summit, the circle one. That's the bonsai field. If you climb Mount Hamilton Range Wildlife Sanctuary, that's the parents. And if you are there, and if I will be there, I will be the tallest organism in the summit of of Mount American Range. I was holding one of the three species, Agathis philippinensis, or we call it locally in our place as Agathis philippinensis. It produces resins. And in a typical ecosystem, this is over 50 meters in height. But it would be dwarfed once it is in Mount American Range Wildlife Sanctuary. It's quite unique, isn't it? It's just more than a meter in height, taller than the Almasiga, which is supposed to be over 50 meters in height. So where is Mount American Range Wildlife Sanctuary situated? It's situated in the southeastern part of Mindanao. There's a location, southeastern part of Mindanao. And what did we do for several years? Decade up to now. We're still doing the research in the area. And we did that repeated transit walk several times. Aside from the repeated transit walk in Mount American Range Wildlife Sanctuary, we also established several sampling plans of 20 by 20 meter area to describe or describe the forest types. And also, we have established the permanent plant there, 2-hectare permanent plant. So, and that's the purpose of long-term monitoring, knowing the benchmark data and document the change through time. And we implemented this kind of activity with assistance of the local stakeholders, the indigenous people, assisting us in the collection of data or implementing our research activities, like establishment of the plot there, preparation of the urban specimens, rain or shine, we have to be there to document, collect the data in the field, and we slept on tents. Not in hotels or nice place, but in tents. Because you have to stay sometimes for 2 weeks in there in the field, collecting this data. And so with that, the field transit walk, sample class of 2020, the data permanent, we have identified and described these vegetation types, the forest types. So we have the agro system, the tropical lowland evergreen forest, tropical lower mountain rainforest, and the tropical upper mountain rainforest. And the interesting forest type is the forest over oil climatic soil. This is the summit, in which the area is about 1,200 hectares. And the trees are dwarf, and mainly endemic species, cyclic species in the area. And so we have this because it is a UNESCO list, and we should know what is the basic information about the richness of the flora in the area. So knowing what is there, we should assess whether the species is threatened, whether the species is endemic, because the threatened endemic species are the priority species for conservation and protection. It's impossible to protect all resources for all species in the landscape, but prioritize the endemic, particularly the site-endemic species, as well as the species which are threatened for conservation. And we have this transit walk, a transit map, to show how the threatened endemic species are distributed along the transit, because this will be the primary species for the protection and conservation. And if you ask me, how many endemic species are there in Mount American Range Wildlife Sanctuary? In our inventory, we have 252 species of endemic species, and 209 species which are threatened. It can be endangered, all, or vulnerable categories. For the fauna, we have 73 endemic species, and 50 of which are threatened. And we have examples of the species of fauna which are already threatened. And more importantly, we have this Philippine eagle, which is critically endangered in the Philippines. We have only a few individuals of this species, and it's really highly protected, and in fact there's a foundation protecting the number of individuals of the Philippine eagle. Now, I mentioned about Philippine endemic species, Philippine. But out of this Philippine endemic species, we have to focus on the narrow endemic species, or the site endemic species, and we have 20. If you count the number of species which are found only in Mount Hamiguitan and nowhere else in the world, we have 20 species. In other words, these are the protected species, so that because if you don't protect them, they are lost forever, and they are lost globally because they are only found in Mount Hamiguitan and nowhere else in the world. So that's one of the reasons why Mount Hamiguitan Range has been declared or has been described as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Many of this we discovered it through exploration, botanical exploration through the years. So every year we kept on discovering new species, new science. And I will say that Hamiguitan Range is a center of picture diversity of the genus Nepenthes. Because in some places in Mindanao or in the Philippines, just one site has only one or two species. But here comes in Mount Hamiguitan, there are 5 species of Nepenthes. These are picture plants, interesting plants, site endemic, and well, it has value. It's a value in the ecosystem. And also, Mount Hamiguitan is the center of grass fern diversity. In the Philippines, we have only 6 species of grass ferns, only 6. But in Hamiguitan, out of the 6 we will be seeing these 5 species of grass fern. It's very interesting, isn't it? In the Philippines, 6 species of grass fern. And now, just in Hamiguitan, a small area, it is a habitat of these 5 species of grass. So that's very important. And what is interesting is this species. We discovered that in 2020. We call it scientifically as Actinomycetes minota. Minota because it is world's shortest grass fern. The shortest grass fern is found in Mount Hamiguitan, and that is Actinomycetes minota, which we discovered in 2020. And so that's the enlarged view of the grass fern. And it grows only the trunk of the tree fern. Only there and nowhere else. And there, our data was used to describe Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary. Okay, it's used as a dossier. That one is the expert from UNESCO who would validate our data gathered in Mount Hamiguitan. And so we trekked for 6 days, 5 nights, exploring Mount Hamiguitan, and the UNESCO expert is there, trying to validate, this is Dr. God, and trying to find the site endemic species of Mount Hamiguitan. He has to search, where are they associated with that landscape? And there in Qatar, it has been described as a World Heritage Site. Okay? And a few slides now. The stakeholders help us, and the mayor of the place, the governor, and the park superintendent, they help us in gathering data and support us. And there, here you will see at the foot, after the inspection, you can see the Natural History Museum at the foot of Mount Hamiguitan. So you don't have the older ones can stay here around and see the diversity of flora and fauna in the area. Okay, you see a slide now. And there, it my concluding remarks that you have to maintain natural biodiversity. There's a balance between utilization and conservation, and there's a need to monitor biodiversity. And I have to emphasize that the research should be collaborative, participatory, multidisciplinary, and there should be capability activities to be implemented for the stakeholders. And I'm thankful for that support. And there, and just a 1 minute video there. And just 1 minute.